Welcome, we are the students of VIT from Division B and Group 6. The group members are Omkar Bajpai, Shreya Bhamble, Prathamesh Manchod, Atharva Bapat, Pranav Garapte, Tanvi Baraskar, and we are here to give a presentation on motherboard and its components. But motherboard is also known as main board, main circuit board, MOBO, system board, or an Apple computer's logic board. It is mainly a printed circuit board (PCB) in general purpose computers and other expandable systems. It holds and allows communication between many of the crucial electronic components of the system, such as the central processing unit, CPU, and memory, and provides connectors for other peripherals. Unlike a backplane, a motherboard usually contains significant subsystems such as the central processor, the chipset, input, output, and memory controllers, interface, connectors, and other components integrated to the general line. Motherboard means specifically a PCB with expansion capabilities. As the name suggests, this board is often referred to as mother of all the components attached to it, which includes the peripheral, interface cards, daughter boards, sound cards, video cards, network cards, host bus adapters, TV tuner cards, and a variety of other custom components. A motherboard provides the electrical connections by which the other components of the system communicate. Unlike a backplane, it also contains the central processing unit and hosts other subsystems and devices. A typical desktop computer has its microprocessor, main memory, and other essential components attached to the motherboard. Other components such as external storage, controllers, or video display and sound and peripheral devices may be attached to the motherboard as plugged-in cards or via cables. In modern microcomputers, it is increasingly common to integrate some of these peripherals into the motherboard itself. Now, let us further move and see what the components of motherboard exactly look like.
Now we are going to see the components of motherboard. First component is CPU socket. In computer hardware, a CPU socket or CPU slot contains one or more mechanical components providing mechanical and electrical connections between a microprocessor and a printed circuit board. It allows the placing and replacing of the central processing unit without soldering. Common sockets include PGA, that is pin grid alley. These designs apply a comprehension force, either a handle or a surface plate is put into the place. This provides superior mechanical retention while avoiding the risk of bending of pins when inserting the clip between the socket. CPU sockets are used on the motherboard in the desktop and server computers because they allow easy swapping of components. They are also used for prototyping new circuits. Laptops typically use surface mount CPUs, which take up less space in the motherboard and fit easily. Next component is a RAM socket. A memory socket, RAM socket, or memory slot allows RAM to be inserted into the computer. Most motherboards have 2 to 4 memory slots, which determine the type of RAM used in the computer. The most common RAM types are SDR RAM, DDR RAM for desktop computers, and SODIMM for laptop computers, each having various type and its speed. The picture below is an example of memory slots. RAM slots are often found in pairs and are sometimes color-coded for identification. We should note that RAM slot in a desktop look different than RAM slot in a laptop. RAM module is rectangular and has a connector on the one of the long sides. RAM slots or sockets on a PC motherboard are long channels, generally located close to the CPU. These are clasped on each other end, so they snap tight around the edge of the RAM when plugged in. Pressing the RAM into the socket will engage these clamps, and they must be disabled before you can remove the RAM. Next component is IDE connector. IDE is acronym for Integrated Drive Electronics. Is a standard type of connection for storage devices in a computer. Generally, IDE refers to type of cables and ports used to connect the some hard drives, optical drives, each other, and the motherboard. An IDE cable is the cable that meets the specification. The most two types of IDE cable commonly used are 34-pin cable used for floppy drives and 40-pin cable used for hard drive. IDE ribbon cables have three connection points like SATA and etc. One end of the IDE cable, of course, connect the cable to the motherboard, and other two are open for devices, meaning you could use IDE cable to attach two hard drives to the computer.
Next important component of motherboard is ATX power connector. ATX power connector is advanced technology extended. It is created for motherboard in 1995 by Intel. You can see here ATX power connector. This is ATX power connector. All data transfers to motherboard through this ATX power connector, so that it is important component for motherboard. ATX power connectors are designed to connect computer's power supply to an ATX motherboard. They are constructed of metal pins laid through nylon matrix. Next important component for motherboard is front panel connector. Front panel connector is a block of connectors on a motherboard that connects the power on, power reset, power beep code speaker, and the LED lights indicators on your PC. All motherboards have front panel connectors. For it, front panel connector is important for every motherboard, so that it is present in all motherboards. Uh, the cables that connect motherboard come from PC case. Front panel connectors consist of small pins that serve electrical purpose, specific purpose for motherboard. All buttons present in front like reset button, power button, restart button, volume buttons are connected to motherboard through this front panel connector, so that it is important for a motherboard. You can see here front panel connector. Next one is SATA sockets. You can see a SATA sockets orange color. A SATA socket is a serial advanced technology attachment. All serial hard disks like CDs, DVDs are connected to motherboard through this SATA socket. This is orange color SATA socket.
This is the front USB connector. The front USB connector is basically present in most of the desktop and laptops. This is the place where we connect the USBs. The second is the cooling fan. The heat generated when the electric current flows between the components can make a computer run slowly. If too much heat is left to build up unchecked, it could damage the computer components. Thus, a computer performs better when it is kept cool. Cooling fans increase the airflow, which helps to remove the heat from the computer. The gaming laptops have special cooling fans. The next is FDD. FDD stands for floppy disk drive. The FDD connector is a pin ribbon connector that connects a floppy disk drive with the computer's motherboard. This connector also provides a route through which the data on the floppy disk can be read and displayed on the computer's interface. The floppy disk, the FDD connector contains 34 pins, and although most of the computers no longer use floppy disk, still FDD connector is present in many of the motherboards.
So next is PCL slot. PCL slot are typically used to install expansion card such as network cards, sound cards, and video cards. These cards are designed to fit into PCL slot to connect the motherboard through slots, pins, or contacts. So next, the number of PCL slot are available on motherboard can vary depending on the motherboard model and manufacturer. So next is PCLE slot. PCLE slot are a type of expansion slot on a motherboard that is designed to accommodate peripheral component interconnect express. These cards can be used to add additional functionality to a computer system, such as high-speed network adapter, graphic cards, and storage device. Uh, Overall, PCLE slots provide a convenient way to expand capabilities of computer system and are common features on a modern motherboards. So next is computer back panel port. The computer back panel port is where you can find the various ports on the back of your computer in case of motherboard. These ports allow you to connect different peripheral and devices to a computer such as keyboard, mouse, monitor, speaker, and USB devices. It is important to note that not all motherboards have the same set of ports on back panel. The number and types of port can vary depending on the motherboard model and the manufacturer.
So the next is heat sink. Heat sink is a small metal piece which sit on the top of a CPU, which let them away the power supply from the all the components, which let them to rise their fins. Heat sink is a passive device, passive component, which meaning there is no moving parts. The next component is COM batteries. COMS battery, it is a memory battery of a lithium, such as a lithium coin cell. It has a life of 3 years when the power supply is unplugged and uh, or the CPU is or computer is switched off. The next component is RAM BIOS. RAM BIOS is RAM means random access memory, and BIOS is a basic input output system. RAM BIOS is a program which stores a non-volatile memory such as ROM, and RAM is used to store the hold the codes of BIOS.
A central processing unit of computer is responsible for executing most of the instructions in computer program. When the CPU processes the data, it generates heat due to flow of electricity through its transistor. If the temperature of the CPU rises too high, it can cause instability and damage to the CPU. To prevent this, CPUs have built-in thermal sensors that can detect when the temperature exceeds safe threshold. When it's happened, the CPU will slow down or shut down to prevent damage. To keep the CPU operating within safe temperature, cooling system are used. The most common type of cooling system is heat sink, which is a metal component that attached to the top of the CPU. Heat sinks are designed to increase the surface area of the CPU so that heat can be dissipated more effectively. The heat sink is often paired with a fan that blow air over the fins of the heat sink, further increasing the cooling effect. There are several methods of cooling a CPU, and most common ones are: first is air cooling. This is the most common and cost effective method for cooling a CPU. It involves using a heat sink and fan to dissipate heat from the CPU. The heat sink is made of metal and is attached to top of the CPU to absorb the heat generated by processor. The fan then blows cool air above the heat sink to dissipate the heat. Liquid cooling. This method uses a liquid, usually water or specially coolant, to cool the CPU. The liquid flow through a block that is placed on the top of the CPU, absorbing the heat, and then flows to a radiator when the heat is dissipated by fans. Liquid cooling is more effective than air cooling and can help to reduce noise generated by fans. There are another also phase change cooling and passive cooling. Overall, the choice of cooling method depends on the CPU's power consumption, the required cooling performance, and budget. Air cooling is suitable for more CPUs, while liquid and phase change cooling are most suitable for high performance systems that require extreme cooling. Next point is the 12 volt ATX power connector is a component of computer motherboard that provides a source of 12 volt or direct current DC power to the system. This power connector is also referred to as the 4-pin P4 or 8-pin EPS power connector, depending on the number of pins that it has. The 12 volt ATX power connector is used to power the CPU, which is one of the most power hungry component in a computer system. Connector delivers a constant supply of 12 volt power to the CPU, which helps to ensure that it operates smoothly and without any interruption. The 4-pin P4 connector has 4 pins and is typically found on older motherboards. It provides up to 120 watt of power to the CPU. The 8-pin EPS connector has 8 pins and is commonly found on newer motherboards. It provides us 288 watts of power to the CPU, which is more than enough to power even the most demanding CPUs. It is important to ensure that the correct power connector is used to CPU, as using an incorrect power connector can cause stability issues or damage to the system. The 12 volt ATX power connector is usually located near the CPU socket on the motherboard, and the connector should be securely attached to the motherboard and power supply unit to ensure a stable and reliable power supply to the CPU.